As of the end of next week, we are all going to be worse off in this country, all thanks to Rishi Sunak and his net zero taxes. A new net zero tax. Well, it's coming back essentially. They've decided to lift the suspension on this nonsensical idea. So let's talk about what's going on in this video. We got some reaction from Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we also have reaction from the leader of Reform UK, Rishi Tice, in this video. Let's firstly talk about what's going on with this government. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, inflation's high, interest rates high, and everything else is obviously completely chaotic, and the economic growth is destroyed, mostly because we are basically managing decline in this country. It's the same thing that we did for a long time in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and look how that turned out. And then now we have this situation where they are still obeying when it comes to the globalist elite and the international bodies and all those entities creating these ideas and telling people like Rishi Sunak or Jeremy Hunt and other governments to all follow the same method. Because blanket policy across the Western world, that's the only way you could do things. What was the point of voting to leave the European Union and officially leave the European Union? Don't get me started with how Brexit has been implemented. The whole point of that was that the same politicians, including Rishi Sunak, who claims to be a Brexiteer, the whole problem we had with the European Union was that Brussels used to make blanket policies for 28 countries. And we said, well, we want to go with self-determination and sovereignty. But no, because it doesn't matter whether you're in the EU or not, we're still obeying to the globalist blanket policies. All right, so this is a £170 net zero tax that's going to hit households, at least, as of the end of next week, the Green Levy. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg said, who was actually Business and Energy Secretary before, he actually said that green levies are part of the problem behind the UK's particularly high electricity prices. They ought to be abolished, but should fall on general taxation until that can happen. The ambition for net zero must not make us cold and poor. Any new or reimposed charge ought to be announced to Parliament first and not slipped through slyly. So that's obviously, we know that. And the problem with this government, and actually recently successive governments, they bypass Parliament, they announce policies to the media first, and they just try to impose it without having a proper debate in Parliament. They've been told off many times by speakers of the House of Commons, and I'm not a big defender of the MPs in the House of Commons, we know that, but process matters. It's important. For the sake of the democracy that we still have a little bit of it left, you still need to go through process. Some sort of accountability is needed. Now, the government came back and said that the government pledged to provide £150 to covering green levies, included in green energy bills for 2 years through the energy price guarantee. That was obviously the bailouts and everything else. By the end of June, this guarantee will have saved a typical household in Great Britain around £1,100. Okay. In total, which includes the £150 we committed to. Now, however, the EPG will no longer be in effect from July 2023, as Ofgem's price cap will be set below the EPG's discount level, meaning customers will pay energy rates in full, including for green levies. Now, these levies are more than pay for themselves by driving investment, according to the government, in renewables and other generation technology, and have saved consumers money on their energy bills overall for the past 10 years. Now, just because you say something doesn't make it true, but people in governments, just all governments, they continue to do that. They create their own scenarios and their own parallel world and think that we're just stupid, we're just going to listen to it. And there have been enough people who just listen to it and say, well, if the government says something, it's probably true. Or if the mainstream media, if the BBC says something, it's probably true. Well, it's not. Question everything and everyone. Now, Rishi Tice, leader of Reform, came and said, more net zero taxes on the poorest and the coldest, as heartless Tories impose green levies again. Another Sunak Tory lie, as they break promise made just last autumn. Yeah, let's not forget, that was the whole thing was announced last autumn, to not do it and to completely stop, well, at least pause, let's just say, but it's coming back. Now, Rishi Tice said only Reform UK will scrap the absurd net zero, which equals net stupid. Yes, I mean, this fight continues, and the next general election is going to be vital because you're going to have both the Conservative Party and the Labour Party running on the same platform, the same green agenda, and they're going to have tiny differences in terms of how they're going to implement net zero. The Labour Party are taking it to a new level. They want to do what the other nonsensical governments are doing, and basically impose a mandatory 2030 target for the 2030 agenda. But the Tories, at least, they say, well, we're not going to do that. We're just going to have ambitions until to aim for 2050. But it doesn't really matter because with certain things, including cars, the target is similar. In the 2030s, they're going to be completely destroying the car manufacturers and eventually stopping all cars. And what next? You really expect everybody to use our public transport that you're not even investing in? So if they want to, they're going to impose a lot of things, including the 15-minute neighborhoods and low traffic neighborhoods and all this, and ULEZ and everything else, right? The whole idea is to get all of us to either walk or cycle or use public transport. With what infrastructure? Firstly, there's a fundamental philosophical problem about individual liberties. We need to have choice. That's a whole different point. Let's forget about that for a second. Let's just pretend that we're losing all that. But in terms of efficiency, logic behind these policies, you cannot say that our public transport is ready to take everybody with all the train strikes. And HS2 is a complete mess. And everything else we're seeing in London and across the country, you really expect us to trust the bus networks or the trains and everything else. It's idiocy, absolute idiocy, but they don't care because it helps the green lobby with the big funding and everything else behind it. Anyway, this is the latest update on the Green Levy. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.